In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to use the spectrophotometer. Let's zoom in closer. So this spectrophotometer has two modes, absorbance and transmittance. And we can switch between them by pressing the button labeled mode. When the red light is illuminated next to the A, that means we're in absorbance. And when the red light is illuminated next to T, that means we're in transmittance. So now we're in transmittance. Now we're in absorbance. For most applications, we want to be in absorbance because of the linear relationship between absorbance and concentration. Next, we want to make sure that our spectrophotometer is set to the right wavelength according to what our procedure says. For this particular analyte, we want to be at 600 nanometers. Finally, we want to blank our spectrophotometer with distilled water. At each spectrophotometer, you'll have cuvettes made of a special material that doesn't have a lot of natural absorbance. In order to blank the instrument, we will fill the cuvette about halfway with distilled water. We want to make sure that we have at least 3 mLs in the tube so that the light doesn't pass over the top of the liquid. Before placing it in the chamber, we'll wipe our fingerprints off as well as any liquid with the Chem wipe, and we'll continue to hold the tube at the top of the tube to avoid adding any imperfections. Then we can open the chamber door and insert the cuvette and push it all the way down, and then close the door. In order to blank it, we press the button labeled 0A or 100% transmittance. Once it's blanked, we can take the cuvette out of the chamber and set it off to the side in case we need to use it again. Then we can take another clean cuvette and transfer our liquid from our first tube. In this case, it's a reagent blank. If you were doing a serial dilution, it would be the most dilute sample in the series, and pour it into the cuvette. And then take your Chem wipe, wipe the outside, and place it in the chamber. You can see that we do have an absorbance for this reagent blank because this reagent is colored. And for reagent blanks, we can either record this number and then manually subtract it out from every single sample, or we can blank the instrument again and have the instrument subtract this number from every single sample. Another interesting thing to note here, if we zoom in, is that there is no leading zero before this decimal place, and it's best practice to always record the leading zero in order to avoid miscalculations or misinterpretation of information. So I'm going to blank the instrument. And record this value for my reagent blank. So I'll record 0.000. It's important to record all the decimal places because that shows the sensitivity of our measurement. I can then remove this reagent blank and pour it back into its original container. We don't want to discard anything yet because we might need it later if something goes wrong. Then we need to clean our cuvette with distilled water. So you squirt some in there, dump it into the decant bucket, and do it again. You want to do it 2 to 3 times to get in and out any residual colored solution. And then you'll gently tap out the excess liquid into a Chem wipe. Doesn't have to get every drop out, that's fine. And then we'll pour our next sample into the cuvette. Wipe the outside with a clean Chem wipe, put it in the chamber, making sure it's firmly seated, and then close the door. And record that number, including the leading zero. It's okay if it changes numbers a little bit. Then pour back into the original container. Clean. Gently tap out the extra liquid. And then you can continue measuring the rest of your samples in the same manner. If you were doing a zero dilution and you started measuring from the most dilute sample to the most concentrated sample, you don't have to rinse the cuvette between each sample because the amount of carryover is very minimum. If you were to go from the highest concentration to the lowest concentration, you would need to rinse between each sample. When we're done with our final measurement, we want to make sure we clean the cuvette the same way we were before. Tap out any excess liquid and then place it upside down in the drying rack. And then we can take our absorbance values and do any calculations that we need to, and if anything looks inaccurate or questionable, we can come back and remeasure because we still have our original tubes. And make sure you close the chamber door when you're done. When you're done with your samples and everything's checked out, you can decant these into the decant bucket and then dispose of your tubes into the biohazard trash. You will not dispose of the cuvettes. They are reusable.